everybody. Ravens fans, Oriole fans, thank you for joining us today for what we are in store for you today, the Ravery Sports Podcast, the Baltimore Sports Podcast for fans like you. Thank you very much for joining us this week. So, thank you for joining us. However, you're joining us here on YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and Facebook. So thank you very much for joining us. Business out of the way. Genesis Notary Services. Definitely like it. If you want to live in the, if you do live in the Shenandoah Valley, or you're traveling to the Shenandoah Valley, you can go ahead and book your notary appointment on our website, Genesis Notary Service. We could go ahead and we'll come out for you and get that squared away. ravorisports.company.site. We will go ahead and you want to buy our merchandise, it's all on the website on ravorisports.company.site. This summer, the Ravery Sports Tour this summer, right before football season, we'll be out selling all of our merchandise. And yes, we will. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and get this squared away for you today. Not feeling great today. A little under the weather. It's all right. But we move on. We record the podcast anyway because we got a great stuff to talk about. What we're going to talk about today is Ravens. Usually, as we start the podcast, as we go ahead and start Raven Sports Tour coming this summer. Last week, we did Ravery Sports Best Players of All Time on Offense. This year, we're going to do Ravery Sports Best Players All Time on Defense. Okay, so Ravery Sports on defense. Ravery Sports best players of all time on defense. We're going to head and get our graphic up, get that squared away, taken care of for you. Okay, so I wanted to go ahead and go over this now. I didn't go over this last week. We're going to go over last week also to some criteria that we're using. Okay, for this, because there are kind of rules when you go ahead and do stuff like this. Go ahead, criteria. Let me pick an all-time list like that. So, like, give a great example. Of that. Mike Flynn, number one center of all time, over like a Matt Burke, who had a better pro career. How many years did you play as well as a Raven? Right. So Matt Flynn didn't have a lot of Pro Bowl seasons, but he was a Raven a long time. Wally Williams, a long time. Things like that. Tenure plays a factor. How many years did you play as a Ravens and as a Ravens starter at a high level? Also, too, did you win any awards, right? So Lamar Jackson over Joe Flacco, all right? Somewhat controversial. Some people are going to disagree with that. And that's the opposite argument, okay? So Flacco played like, I think it was 10 years compared to Lamar Jackson, like 6 now, going into his 6th season. But Lamar Jackson, league MVP, won that. First team All Pro, got that. Awards like that, that stuff like matters as a Raven. What did you do as a Raven? Ray Lewis example, you'll see on defense. Defensive Player of the Year. To me, that's akin to MVP for an offensive player. So, do you have awards? Do you have things like that on your team? Do you have those type things that help you win? Do you have those type of awards? So, those are things you look at. So those are some of the criteria we're using to go ahead and go over this today. Who is the greatest players of the Ravens on defense on all time? This was much harder, fans, than the offense. Much more difficult to decipher the best defensive players. No surprise, considering the great defensive players that we had. Offense, some positions, it was a bit of a struggle to even find those great players. On defense, I mean, we might have even left some good names out, on defense. But best defensive players of all time on defense for the Ravens. Defensive end, defensive tech. Now, stick with the tackle the traditional position. I didn't do Russian, the nickel corner, and those days. Who played the positions the best? We'll go from 5 to 1 as far as who was the best players on those teams. Calais Campbell, I have him at 5. Uh, very dominant at the Russian 3-4, but one of the best 3-4 ends that the Ravens have ever had. Even though he was in his older years, very dominant 3-4. I put him at 5. Anthony Weaver, another one of those 3-4 defensive ends. Ravens defense changed a good while ago. When they first started, they were a 4-3 defense with a traditional 4-down lineman, 3 linebackers, like Ray Lewis at the beginning part of his career. Then they went ahead and switched to a 3-4. But basically, they've been doing that for the last 17 years or so, something like that, 3-4. Like that, when Billy was the coach, he switched it to a 3-4 after Marvin Lewis left. So 3-4. Anthony Weaver is that guy. 4th, Rob Burnett, very underrated on that Super Bowl winning Ravens defensive line. One of the best defensive lines, I think, in football history. The whole line as a whole isn't always stated as that. One of the best defensive lines of all history. Trevor Price, 3-4 in, but that was no consequence. He was like a Calais Campbell closer to his prime with the Ravens. 10 sacks, one of the best they ever had. He was dominant inside as a tackle, he was dominant outside. Fantastic Trevor Price career. Number 1, Michael McCrary, more sacks than anybody in Ravens history. No question about it. Love just watching him. All the analytics and the nerdy football stuff aside, he was phenomenal to watch. Motor. When I hear that motor, I think of this guy, Michael McCrary, number 1, defensive end. Defensive tackle. This is one of my favorite Ravens ever, Kelly Gregg. Every time I saw Kelly Gregg play, I said, take a look at the gut. Take a look at his stomach. Try and get a first down in the stomach of Buddy Lee, Kelly Gregg. I absolutely love Kelly Gregg. I'm a Kelly Gregg mark. He's a fantastic guy. Overachieved by every metric you can imagine. Every metric you can imagine. Small than Syracuse, smaller than all these guys on this list. But he started 10 years, just plain old hustle. Love Kelly Gregg, one of my favorite players. Number 5 on the list. Brandon Williams, number 4. Nose tackle for many years up until it was previous year. Brandon Williams was solid for a long time. Nose tackle for them. Great run stopper. More of the traditional nose stopper team that uses that. Stop the run very much. Bigger part of things, more unsung in that. But I think Brandon Williams was 5. I have Sam Adams and Syracuse at 2 and 3. They're 2A and 2B. There would be no great career without Ray Lewis. Ray Lewis called these guys. He is the Michael Jordan himself, Ray Lewis, and they are the Scottie Pippen, and I totally agree. You could forget running the ball with these two there in the middle with the 2000 Ravens. You couldn't run the ball because Syracuse was there, Adams was there, Ray Lewis was there. There would be no rushing of the football. There wasn't for a long time with these guys. Fantastic run stoppers. Number 1, Haloti Ngata. We finally learned his name, that difficult name to learn. Haloti Ngata. I'm shocked he didn't win Defensive Player of the Year. I don't think he did win Defensive Player of the Year. Best inside guy, I think, one of them while he was playing. You had to put 2 guys on him for him not to wreck your whole game plan. And he also had the privilege of playing with great players around him as well, even though as good as he was. So Haloti Ngata is the number 1 defensive tackle. Outside linebacker. This was tough. There was a lot of good players on the list. Left Paul Kruger out, left Ty Spicer out. But it was hard to do. But we're going to go ahead and do the list here. Matt Judon, you look at the sacks total for the Ravens throughout his career, he's one of the top guys, believe it or not. So that's one of the guys, though. that was very much at the top there, Matt Judon. Dallas Thomas. Um, he was the outside linebacker. Uh, play him on the inside, play him on the safety. He was one of the guys, but you're seeing more now in the league. One of the first guys. Yeah, he was an outside linebacker. He had like 10 sacks 1 year. But he really play him anywhere. Very versatile. Went to New England. I think he played inside linebacker. Dallas Thomas, and a late round guy, kind of worked his way. Very talented guy. Jamie Sharper. There's a guy you don't want to forget about. Fell in the first round in the draft. These guys, these next two on the list were drafted together. I think he was a guy, a lot of people thought he would go early first round, mid first round, fell to the second. Jamie Sharper was a tackling machine. You want to talk about those first two guys we just talked about, uh, to Saragusa and Sam Adams. And then you have a guy like Ray Lewis, and Jamie Sharper was just as good. Jamie Sharper was outstanding. Most guys, I call him, use basketball term, like the Michael Cooper for the old basketball term. Like, nobody knows how good Michael Cooper was because there was Magic Johnson on the floor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was on the floor, James Worthy was on the floor. Nobody noticed how good Jamie Sharper was because he was surrounded. That just tells you how good some of the defenses were. Peter Boulware, number 2. Peter Boulware, I think, would be one not for the injury. Once he got injured, that was pretty much it. He did come back. He wasn't the same player. Once he got back, it was a testament to him getting back on the field. Peter Boulware, when he came out of Florida State, fantastic pass rush. He was the pass rush that they needed on those great Ravens defenses in the 2000s, early 2000s, and things like that. They had those great run stoppers, great offensive up the middle, but the pass rush, that came a lot of that from Peter Boulware, who replaced Peter Boulware, the number 1 on the list, outside linebacker, Terrell Suggs. No doubt about it. Suggs, Sizzle, get the ball. Sizzle, get the ball. Sizzle was everything you want in an outside linebacker. Some guys are speed rushers. Some guys are power rushers. Some guys are linebackers. Some guys are DNs. Suggs was all 4, which would made him great. Terrell Suggs, I think, definitely, any way you slice, the greatest outside linebacker on defense for the Ravens. Inside linebacker. Not a lot of these guys on the list as much as we think it is because of what I said. They basically, you had the one guy played inside, and then you kind of switched 3-4. So you had a couple guys. Ed Hartwell played well with the Ravens. Kind of sought after once he left, kind of like really fell off a little bit once he left the Ravens, but was pretty good with the Ravens. Worked his way into a starter, like a 4th round. Exactly what you want from that position. I think a lot of teams would do just fine. Jared Johnson. I know he played outside. He also played inside. He was a bit of a Swiss Army knife, like Thomas. Kind of moved him around a bit. I kind of saw him more as an inside linebacker. He's more of a set the edge type guy, like a Mike, like a Rob Nikovich type guy, a set the edge guy more than he was a pass rusher, more of an inside-ish guy. That's why I meant inside linebacker. Jared Johnson was a guy. Not a lot of sacks, but a great guy. Tackles, he would hit you when you get there. That makes any sense. It hit you when you get there. CJ Mosley, still going. I think tremendous career with the Ravens. I'm still surprised now that they let him go, considering how good he was. CJ Mosley was a very good inside linebacker for the Ravens. Very good for the Jets even now. So CJ Mosley, not as good, I think, as the top 2 guys on this list, and not as long of a career. But a guy, one thing that impressed me about Mosley right from the beginning, very rarely on John Harbaugh do rookies start right away from minicamp. He never started right away immediately. CJ Mosley, number 3 on the list. Bart Scott. Here's the thing with Bart Scott. Bart Scott was a lot better than a lot of people thought, even how he gets credit for it. Here's the thing with Bart Scott. Him and Ray Lewis were free agents. At the same time, the Ravens were seriously considering getting rid of Ray Lewis and keeping Bart Scott because they were about free agents at the same time. I forget the year that was. It was towards the tail end for Ray. But Bart wound up signing with the Jets because I think of the 6-year option where the Ravens, they eventually just outbid the Ravens. So the Ravens went back to sign Ray Lewis. Ray was in his mid-30s at that point. And I think that actually could have been a different story here for Ray Lewis. Bart Scott hit hard, man. I think he's very underrated for the way he hit people. Bart Scott hit more of a straight line guy, not as big to me. The sideline, I thought he was best moving forward, kind of like Moses, best moving forward. But Bart Scott, I think, is number 2 on the list, second best inside linebacker for the Ravens, or Mike linebacker, inside linebacker. Number 1, no question. Not only is he number 1 on this list, I believe the greatest Raven there ever was, Ray Lewis. Every defensive record, he's so far away from him. Everybody else, it's not even close. I think he changed the position the way it is. There's nobody even in the league now as good as Ray. It's not even close to me. I mean, I guess we have purple colored glasses on, being Raven fans, but Ray Lewis was so far away from everybody else. And I say this about Ray Lewis, and I haven't heard a lot of people say it. Ray Lewis, he's the best inside linebacker. You'd have put him at safety, he'd been a Pro Bowl safety. You'd have put him in outside linebacker or rush in, he'd been a Pro Bowl at that. He was just a phenomenal athlete. Never. The energy level of him was on a different level, even with some of the greatest athletes of the world. No question, she was great. I mean, no question. Yeah. Cornerback. This was super hard, and I'm not even super confident in this list because it was so hard differentiating some of these good corners, but it was very close. Give it a shot. Dwayne Starks, number 5. One of the early picks, first round picks for the Ravens. Played about 4 years on that great Ravens defense in 2000. Dwayne Starks was underrated a bit. I thought I looked at the stats and I was very impressed. But I was kind of like even underrated a little bit itself because he kind of played with somebody else on the list we'll get to. But Dwayne Starks was very, very good on the list for the Ravens. Only finances couldn't keep him. When a guy is this talented, he's not going to stay. I think he's one of these guys also too. Had he stayed a Raven, stayed here, it would have better. Some guys, you saw with Ed Hartwell, you saw it with some of these guys, they go to different teams, and it just doesn't work as well. But Dwayne Starks, number 5 on the list. Number 4 is Marlon Humphrey, the Ravens' current number 1 corner. Marlon Humphrey is fantastic. You could put him on an island, put him in the slot, put him anywhere on the field, put him in safety, does everything really well. Only thing, doesn't have the longevity. He has a very good shot to be number 1 on this list at some point. I think if he keeps playing at the level he's playing 4 more years, we do this list again, I think definitely you could have Marlon Humphrey at the top of the list. Ladarius Webb, number 3. Ladarius Webb, I think, really is going to be one of the most underrated NFL players that ever played. It's really underrated how good Ladarius Webb was for a 3-4 year stretch there. He was, I mean, I think he went, was it 25 games without giving up a touchdown or something like that, or 2 seasons without giving up I mean, he really was dominant. Kind of a 3rd round pick when it was really, really good. Towards the end of his career, lost a step, more played in the slot, couldn't play outside anymore, a bit more of a safety-ish guy. Darius Webb, I think, not been for injuries, could have been really one of the top guys in the NFL. Not talked about nearly as much. Jimmy Smith, number 2 rather. And I'm telling you, 1, 2, and 3 splitting hairs. Really close. Jimmy Smith, number 2. Jimmy Smith, I think, was one of the better corners. It was physical, very strong. I don't think Jimmy was ever the greatest. He wasn't he wasn't a Deion Sanders record, but he was a physical corner, more like a Rod Woodson when he played. He's going to hit you, get hands on you, take the ball away. Um, More workmanlike for an elite guy is usually. Jimmy Smith was really good. A lot of injuries kept him from number one, though. I couldn't put him ahead of Chris McAllister, who I have at number one. Chris McAllister in his prime, I thought, was the best Ravens corner. Kind of fell out of favor with the Ravens a bit throughout the years, towards the end. But Chris McAllister in his prime, one of the best corners in the league, cover you on an island, and played on some great defenses as well. Chris McAllister was as good as any player in Ravens history on defense. Safety, DeJuan Landry, have him there. Good, strong safety for a couple years. Mid-round pick. A lot of these safeties are mid-round picks. DeJuan Landry was a good mid-round pick for the Ravens. Played well for several years as a safety. So DeJuan Landry is number 5. Chuck Clark, who just got sent out to the Jets. Number 4. Quiet as kept, best player we had for a couple years. Chuck Clark was very good. Chuck Clark was a solid defensive player for the Ravens. Good as you can find as safety. Again, typical Ravens 6th-round pick on defense. Did very well for a couple years. Eric Waddell, number 3 rather. Eric Waddell, one of the best free agent acquisitions we ever got. Right away after Ed Reed was gone, he replaced it right away. You immediately got the safety, you really got the leadership back, you immediately got the interceptions back. Not quite as good as Reed, not quite the speed that he had, but Eric Waddell was outstanding. Well, we only wish I could have had him longer for his whole career. He might have been number 1. Rod Woodson, I think, is one of the best defensive players of all time. Hall of Fame safety. He's an outstanding safety. Nobody's going to think of him as a safety. People more think of him as a Steeler, as a corner, because he was like number 2 in the league. Probably at the time he played, maybe only behind Deion Sanders. Rod Woodson, though, for the safety, the 2000 Ravens, as well, outstanding free agent acquisition for the Ravens. Ed Reed, the best safety in the Ravens history. His interception totals, you wouldn't even believe it if you heard. I mean, Ed Reed just found the ball regardless. It was beyond speed. I mean, he was fast, but he just had a knack for finding the ball. I don't even know if that's strong enough a term, but Ed Reed was so good with the interception, so good every era, so good, period. Ed Reed, greatest safety in Ravens history. Special teams, going to talk about these guys. The whole Wolf Pack. Morgan Cox, Sam Cooke, and Justin Tucker. The only question with Tucker is Tucker the greatest kicker to ever live? I've never seen anything like Justin Tucker. And he was helped by these 2 guys. That's why they're there too. These guys were great at their jobs as well. Cooke, a long-time punter. Morgan Cox as well. And Jermaine Lewis. I have him at I couldn't wait to talk about Jermaine Lewis. 96, the 2 top picks, Ray Lewis, Jonathan Ogden. The other guy that worked out was this guy, Maryland grad, Jermaine Lewis. He was the guy you don't even see nowadays. Every time the ball was kicked to him, I thought it was going in the end zone. That's how good he was. 6 touchdowns as a punt returner for the Ravens. Most of team history. Yards, not even close. Jermaine, number 1 special teams punt returner of all time for the Ravens. There you go. Coaches, we didn't do because we've only had 3 coaches. But if you want me to put them in order, we're glad you put them in order. Obviously, Ted Marchibroda at the bottom, Brian Billick second, and John Harbaugh third. John Harbaugh, I think, despite all the criticism I have given him or whatever, John Harbaugh has been phenomenal as a coach. So John Harbaugh has done a phenomenal job with the Ravens. So there you go. The Ravens going ahead, and we said that the greatest players of defense of all time for for the Ravens. So definitely check that out. Going forward, we have this up for you. And give us your own opinion. Let us know what you think. Go ahead if you have comments or whatever on the Twitter page. I know my Twitter page has been growing here recently. So definitely, what do you think of that? Who is the greatest Ravens defensive players of all time, position by position? All right. So let's go ahead and get that. We will go now into baseball. We're a little bit more baseball heavy these days because we're in the midst of baseball season. Couple questions here. Are the Tampa Bay Rays still the best team in the AL? The Tampa Bay Rays, formerly Tampa Bay Devil Rays. So I'm so glad they changed that. I hate that they named Devil Rays. I didn't like that one at all, especially team before calling them. So the Devil Rays. Tampa's impressing me. I think because they don't spend money, I think they're kind of underrated. I think their pitching is very good. They've been the whole division as of this recording in the AL East is over 500, and they're killing, and they're about 9 games ahead of them. That's how good Tampa is. I think Wander Franco is coming along. I think McClanahan, I think their pitching, I think is probably the best of all baseball so far this year. Yeah, I think the Rays absolutely are for real. I really like their manager, Kevin Cash. I think Kevin Cash is very underrated. He's always held it together, undermanned a little bit in Tampa. Very good Rays teams. Which teams below 500 will make a playoff run? It's always tough to tell when teams are 500 and will they make a playoff run. It's hard sometimes to go ahead and figure that out. I'm going to stick with the White Sox. I think they're kind of creeping up slowly but surely. I really like the young players. Oscar Callis, Andrew Vaughn, a lot of these guys have stepped in. I think the problem is the pitching was so bad they were losing. So I think that's what the issue is. I think their pitching's getting better. They're still in a weak division. We talked about the AL East being so good. They would be, the Twins are in first, they'd be in last in our division. Keep that in mind. So I think they are below 500 and they still have a shot to go ahead and get that squared away. I haven't lost faith in the Cardinals. The Cardinals are kind of creeping up there slowly but surely, and kind of the same thing. In that NL Central, really nobody's really jumped out ahead of them to really go ahead and do that. Brewers are there, but I definitely think they can make a playoff run as constructed. Opposite question. Which teams above 500 will miss the playoffs? I'm going to fix that graphic there. And keep that squared away for you. There we go. Now we got it right on the screen. Miss a playoff run. Who above 500 will miss the playoff run? The Padres need to get it together now. It's the issue with them is all the money they're spending, how bad their offense is. That's what's kind of confusing to me. Like their offense, considering they went out and got Matt Carpenter, who struggled a bit. They went out and got Nelson Cruz, who struggled a bit. They're surprised their offense isn't. You would think for sure that's the case. Phillies and Mets, barely around the 500 mark. They should be doing better considering all the money they're spending as well. So, don't know. We're getting now towards the real season, baseball summer in June. So, keep that in mind. One more, Orioles. Will the Baltimore Orioles, be buyers at the trade deadline? I don't think so. Now, should they be? Yes. I don't think they're not going to be buyers because in order to buy, you have to have money. Not like my checkbook, you buy something there and you have to have money. There's no money, right? The Orioles, I think it'll be interesting to see what they say I think what they're going to say is we have confidence in the guys we have. That's what they would say, or a variation of that. I don't know that, but I don't think there's. If you could get another Cole Irvin type player, I think Eduardo Rodriguez is a guy they looked at. I don't know if the Tigers pay a big part of his salary. I think the Orioles might be interested in something like that. But I think they would say, um, I think that what they would say is they're going to go ahead and. All right, thank you. Wife gave me anything. If they would say, I think they would say that they have confidence in what they have. That's what you say when you don't have money to buy something. So don't turn the light off. That's what they would say. So I don't think they're going to buy anything significant. I would say this: there's going to be pressure on them. It's not going to work. You're saying, well, it'll be very interesting to see because you're in a pennant race now. You are fighting for the World Series right now. You have one of the best records in the American League, so that's definitely a thing to see if you are uh, going to go ahead and get that taken care of. So we'll see how that goes going forward. NBA. It's been a while since I had my game graphic up, so we'll go ahead and get it up. So the Miami Heat, after 7 games, go ahead and they advance to the finals. We're gonna have a game one tomorrow night. If you're watching this on Wednesday, we're gonna have a game one there as well. So Miami was an 8 seed, 44-38 in the Eastern Conference. The Nuggets' best record in the Western Conference. Go ahead and advance. So it's going to be Heat and Nuggets in the finals. I gotta confess I'm rooting for Jimmy Butler. I gotta go ahead and confess it. Two guys I've always really admired in basketball. I've really always admired Jimmy Butler and guys like that. Guys who were kind of like D League players or middle or guys who kind of came from guys who kind of weren't expected and become stars. I always have respect for those guys. And I've always been being a Laker fan my entire life, a Pat Riley guy. Pat Riley's going to another finals. Stat here. He's been involved in 1/4 of the NBA finals ever. Think of that. Everywhere he's been. He's been the Lakers. He went with that so many times. He's with the Knicks. He went to the finals time. He's been with the Heat. Heat as a coach in the final like 5 or 6 times. What a phenomenal feat that is. Nuggets haven't been there before. That's making me nervous. As good as they were in the regular season, as good as they were in the playoffs, they kind of broke through. Maybe that has shaken it off, but that's it. Jokic and Bam Adebayo is going to be a key matchup. Bam's only job is going to be to bang on Jokic. That's your job. To stop might be the best player in the league, one of the best players in the league. There. Jamal Murray has also been fantastic in this playoffs as well. So Bam Adebayo is going to be that matchup is going to be so key. Defensive guy. He scores some points. So he scores some points. So that's going to be a thing. You got to go ahead and keep your eye on that. For the Heat, Caleb Martin. How good has he been? Charles Barkley said this guy should have been the MVP of the Eastern Conference playoffs. That's saying a lot. I'm fine with them giving it to Jimmy Butler, but they better go ahead and keep their eyes on this guy as well. So I like Miami in this series. Some of y'all are going to think that's crazy. I don't. I like the fact that the Heat have been here before, and they kind of understand that they kind of like took their foot off the gas a bit, I think, in the Celtics series, and they lost a couple games in a row there. But they're here. I like the Heat over the Nuggets in this series. It's going to be great to watch. Definitely check it out on ABC if you haven't checked it out. NBA is fantastic. The old 80s commercials there. So NBA, we'll go ahead and check that out as well. All right. So what we're gonna do this summer is, for me, and I don't know how it is for a lot of you. You look at a lot of things, um, and you look at a lot of things in sports and in life in cycles, right? For me, always being an NBA fan, the calendar says the NBA season starts around Halloween, sometime maybe more recently, maybe a little bit before Halloween, maybe early November, first weekend or something like that. For me, it always starts on Christmas Day. That's when I'm more locked into the NBA, when the NBA actually starts. For me, baseball starts. It started in April, and it always starts for me right after Memorial Day. I lock into what I call baseball summer. So with this, we're going to go ahead and talk baseball summer. We're going to talk a little bit about the minor league teams that the Orioles had. So this week we're going to talk about Norfolk Tides. Next week we're going to get to the Blue Bay Sox. We're going to go ahead and get to the Aberdeen Ironbirds as well. May talk about the Frederick Keys a little bit as well. Former affiliate of the Baltimore Orioles as well. For me, living near the Keys, for me, is still a thing. I like the Keys game is probably the easiest one for me personally to get to. It's about 45 minutes away as far as the Keys game. So let's go ahead and get it squared away. Now, when you look at minor league performers, everybody, including me, a lot of times, lock in on who is the prospects. It's easy to talk about Grayson. It's easy to talk about Calzer. It's easy to talk about those guys. But there are other guys on the team as well. So let's look at the team, okay? So let's not just look at that as far as the teams. But let's not just look at the not just the prime prospects. So let's look more. Let's dive into a little bit more of the team. So who's leading here? I see Josh Lester, about 28 years old, 13 home runs, 45 RBIs. Now these stats aren't of the recording. Maybe about May 25, 26. You get the idea. It's more fairly recent. This basically gives you a picture of that. So 13 home runs, 45 RBIs. Doing well in the minor leagues. He always has. You never know. There's a thing that's not talked about in baseball enough, and I see this with Bruce Zimmerman a lot. He's a more common one because he's actually been at major league level. But there are guys that are 4A players, right? So they're in the minors and they play well. And they go to the big and they go to the A and they play well, and they go to the levels and they play well. They finally get good in AAA. They go to majors. That's it. So that's what that's when a guy at 28 years old is in the minors. He's in his prime, right? Those are prime years for an athlete. So Josh Lester, he's doing well there in the minors, but we'll see how that translates there. Definitely has a spot open there, possibly. And will we see him during the year? I think he's playing well for the Titans. Here's our guy, Jordan Westburg, shortstop. He's played various infield positions, but this season he's been at shortstop for them. He's been phenomenal. 12 home runs, 42 RBIs, 309. One of the best posts Ravorisports Sports has had so far is when I said, "Hey, look, we're losing Cedric Mullins. I'd like to see Jordan Westburg on the team, right?" And Jordan Westburg, they wound up not doing it. We'll get to that, but I really think it's time for him to go ahead and come up to the major, based on what we've seen in the minors. Nothing left. I think at 24 years old, nothing left to go ahead and do at the minors for him. I really like to see him get a shot. Daz Cameron, center fielder, kind of like Lester. Guy's been in the minors a long time. 7 home runs, 23 RBIs. Very solid. I think he's been hitting in the one hole for them. Very good. Colton Cowser, now injured. I think he's just coming. I'm not sure if he's still injured, but he might be coming off the list. 7 home runs, 28 RBIs, 331 average. DL Hall, one one loss, 506 ERA. Not great. He's striking out. I got that strikeout number. He's striking out a lot of people. The problem with DL is when they're making contact, it's going over the fence. He's got to minimize your home runs. He's doing a lot well, but you can't give up home runs at the rate he's giving up. Home run total is too high. That's why he's still in AAA. He's got to work on that and minimize that before you really can do anything at the majors. Drew Rom is one of the best pitchers in the minor league system. I don't know how good he's going to be at major league level. 4.2, 3.40 ERA. He's been the most consistent minor league pitcher the last couple years. I think he definitely deserves a pitcher. His stuff isn't great. He's junk ball as far as I'm concerned. I think that could still work at major leagues. I think everybody now is there's no such thing. There's almost no such thing as a guy, less than 80 all the time. I think but he's as a left-hander. I think he deserves a shot. Chris Valmont, I think his ERA is 2.65, very good in the minors as well. Norfolk Tides as well. As far as that goes, record for them is very, very good. They have been not only winning games, but destroying people in the minor leagues. That tells you how good the Orioles minor league system is. That tells you how good the Tides are. Pulling the record up now. But they've been really in the minor leagues and done well in the minors. 36-15, 706 winning percentage. They are 8 games ahead of so in the International League. Fantastic. So the team as a whole is good. Obviously, we know how good some of these prospects are, and they are all playing well. Even the guys like the Lester and Cameron, the filling guys, there as well. So there you go. Norfolk Tides. They're doing well in the minor leagues. And that's the next step there. AAA, I think most guys in AAA can probably play in the majors. Almost all of them. I think they're not stars always, and that's what you're trying to find out. But most guys there can, and when I mean play, I mean compete in the majors. They're not overwhelmed. They are in the majors. So those are the guys that are there in the minors that are doing well. As well. Now, we did have, unfortunately, Cedric Mullins go on the IL. He was replaced by Aaron Hicks, and he was recently released by the Yankees. Aaron Hicks, he actually is in there today. Right now, recording as I'm checking the score right now. Orioles are playing the Guardians right now. So we're definitely checking that out as we're going along. Yeah, so the game is live right now. Last I saw there, Santander crushed the homer over the fence like that and put the Orioles ahead. Santander doing well. So we'll do the Orioles recap here as well for the month of May. One last thing, guy who got the start today, Keegan Aiken keeps showing up with the team. Kind of put him in the category of Bruce Zimmerman. You keep seeing Keegan Aiken. Keegan Aiken is kind of the guy, kind of like the guy I'm talking about. Always good enough to play. That's what you want with AAA players. If you lose 4 or 5 guys, you get a bunch of injuries. Hey, a lot of these guys are already good enough to play in the majors. We'll go over Bowie next week. The tell for a lot of guys, as far as minor leagues, is how they do in Double A. That's the thing. That's the separator between guys. Okay, we're not even going to have them on the AAA roster. We're not even going to do anything with them go forward, or we're going to move off these guys. How well do they do in Double A? That's the thing. So let's recap May. for the Orioles. Now, like I said, they are still in the middle of one more game. So I have the stats here though and everything from May 31st. All right, so we got that taken care of. All right, so 35-20. There's a game still going on now. At the end of May, they've won 6 out of the last 10. Right now, they won 5 total series in the month of May. We talked about this. Cedric Mullins just had an injury as well. Among the league leaders of stolen bases, everything you want. I think he's your I think he's your best offensive player next to Adley Rutschman. You don't have a ton of power in the real super thought. I keep saying that, but you got a lot of good players, but you don't have a hammer, and a half. You got good hammers. You have what I call the Cal Ripken power. 25, 30 home run guys, not the Jose Canseco power. He hit 50 and 60. Or Mark McGwire or whatever it is. You got guys like that. You have a bunch of guys like that. So when you lose your leadoff guy, that's a little bit of a problem. That's a little bit of an issue when you have that. Adley Rutschman should start in the AL in the All-Star game. Been everything you've asked for. Everything. I don't think there's. I'd be very, very surprised he doesn't start in the AL All-Star game. You could call him the best catcher in the American League. I think he's right up there. Sean Murphy, JT Morale, he's been good again this month. He's good, period. Adley's outstanding. Ryan Mountcastle, 11 home runs, 38 RBIs, leading the team in home runs and RBIs. No surprise. Still doesn't get a lot of love for fan. I really like Mountcastle. I always have. Swings at too much garbage still. Only thing with him. Defensive is very much improving. There's a big difference when you see him in and then when you see somebody else and he takes a day off or whatever. So I think he's very good. Santander, he hit the home run today. Kind of thumbs in the middle. He hasn't been great or bad. I like to have seen more from him, obviously. But I think he's been as advertised. I think he'll wind up with 20-plus home runs. Kind of what we were talking about. 20-plus home runs, 7-plus, 80 RBIs, something like that. That's about what you're going to get from him. Austin Hayes, hitting over 300, getting good defense. Hey, he's considered probably the third of the 3 outfielders this year. He's been outstanding. I don't think he's as good as Mullins and Rutschman, but he might have to step in and be the number 2 guy here with Mullins out. Very good. He's been hitting over 300 all year. He's like at 311, I think, the last I checked. Outstanding. He's been very good defensively as well. I got Austin Hayes has been very, very good. Gunnar Henderson, steadily improving with the bat. It's been a slow come along though. He's above 200. I'm gonna look it up again now. I think he's still above 200, just barely, but it's been a slow come along. What I like to see with him more. Average has been creeping up from a bad start. A little bit more thunder in his hits. A lot of his hits, I'm kind of looking at them kind of just of the Bill Ripken variety. Very, a single here, infield. I like to see him really hit with more authority, usually, consistently. Ryan O'Hearn. Okay, so you haven't had Arias in there. He's been on IL, injured. So what has he been doing? He's been hurt. James McCann has filled in for him. James McCann hasn't filled in. It's been Ryan O'Hearn getting a lot of the bats. Surprising. But he's been decent. He's pretty. When you're missing a guy, this is the type of guy that a manager likes more than I like. Versatility, a guy playing that multiple positions. And that's what you've seen from him. Decent enough hitter, though. He's kind of hit enough to ahead of. I think it's been James McCann probably be the other guy you consider there in that spot. Adam Frazier, more and more when I see him, I think he's blocking Jordan Westburg. That's bad to say, I guess. He hasn't been terrible. He's been I kind of described it as advertised. He's been solid at second base. He's been solid as a player, but I don't. This is kind of what you're gonna get. You're kind of getting like 260, 250 is average, 14, 15 home runs. I don't. I don't know why they were so anxious to get him and play him. I would rather have seen Westberg or something like in there, or a young guy in there. Mateo, after the great first month, average has really dropped. That's okay though. I think this is kind of what he is. I think he had the hot start. Guys have hot starts, and his average has dropped. This is kind of what he is. About 230-ish hitter, etc. That's that's about right for him where he is at. Starting rotation: Kyle Gibson, 7-3. He's been their best pitcher all season. Had a bit of a shaky patch there for a minute, but he's been good. I got no problem with Kyle Gibson. Not a true ace, but he's been their best, definitely. Dean Kramer, 5-2, 4.58 ERA. See it coming a bit with Kramer. Need to be a little bit more consistent. See it coming. He's still. I'm fine giving him the ball every fifth day. Tyler Wells, 3-2, 3.29 ERA. Wells is a pretty good pitcher. He's not a real. I kind of don't see him as a good starter. As a starter, I think he's kind of one of these guys. He's kind of in between the long guy and the. He's kind of in between the long guy and the starter. He doesn't pitch enough innings for me. He just does. 5.5, 4.5. It's just I'm just not in love with that. Good Bradish. We got the last start. Good Bradish, bad Bradish. Kyle Bradish. So good at sometimes. So outstanding. If you could just be consistently good, that's it. All the tools are there for him. All the tools are there. I'm gonna get off this case and start rooting more for Kyle Bradish to be good. Grayson Rodriguez sat down after his last start, 3.5 ERA. No reason to even go there. They tried. I don't think it's over. Some guys just don't right away pick it up. I think sending him down is good. It's concerning considering the lack of dollars that the Orioles are spending on those two positions. It's a little bit concerning because this is what has to happen, right? Because you're not going to have money to actually go ahead and spend. You got to go ahead and use your minor league system to go ahead and take care of that. One more graphic. Felix Bautista. There are two locks for the All-Star game. You can lock in Adley and you can lock in Felix Bautista. No question. Barring an injury, he'll be on the All-Star team. No question about it. Yadier Cano should get some consideration as well. I don't know how that goes with setup guys a lot of times. They usually don't take a lot of setup guys. He's been awesome. 10 holds. Fantastic. ERA still under 1. Fantastic. I got no problem putting him in the All-Star games. I don't think that's likely, but he's been good. Clayton Perez has just not been as good as he was last year. Bit shaky at times. It looks like he's lost a little bit of velocity to me when I'm watching him. He really was more of a flamethrower last year. It looks like he's got pitches look like it's up a bit too, like for him. More consistent though. A little bit more consistent. Haven't lost the faith though. Danny Columbi, hopefully I'm saying that right. He's been right there with Batista and Cano as far as consistency. He gave up a couple runs now, but he's been awesome all year long. Brian Baker, better than you think. 3.80 ERA. I like him in spots when he's always delivering when you need him. That's what I like about him. When you have good spot and you need him, he's delivering. Last two, Mike Baumann. Mike Baumann has been good this year out of the bullpen. I think this is pretty much where he should be. Slipping a bit, giving up a few runs. Michael Givens, still kind of working his way into form, as far as I'm concerned. So there you go. Main recap of the Orioles. Uh, so we'll go ahead and do that for you. So definitely check out the Orioles. Hopefully, if you're watching this already, and you're watching this at 8 o'clock at night, when it goes live for the first time. Hopefully, you're watching it after Oriole victory that we're going on right now. Little channel update, right? So it looks like we're moving here. I am like that. So we're going to be recording a little bit earlier next week. And then the next week, either we're not going to have one or it's going to be shorter. May have like an interview or something like that, some other content. So it may have to take like a week here. That so like that because I'm going to be in the middle of doing stuff. Not so much that would stop me in a lot of sense, but obviously I can't record. I don't have a setup there, so because I have to move my setup and all that other stuff. So we'll get that squared away. So enjoy the games. We'll go ahead and get that squared away. Thank you very much for watching the Ravery Sports Podcast, the Baltimore Sports Podcast. Thank you very much for joining us this week. Thank you very much, and you enjoy the rest of your day.